Hello, hello, everyone. This is your host of the Gutencast, Anthony Horvath. I'm wearing my grumpy old Git shirt, which comes to me as a gift from today's guest. And the funny thing is the older I get, the grumpier I get. Uh, I'm really hard to live with these days, if you must know. Fortunately, very few people live with me, so it's not that big of a deal. Plus, I only have to see interact with like 5 people a week on a good week. So, it works. But here in America, nobody knows what a Git is. So there has been much confusion about this. And yeah, we've learned that there are certain English slang words that you do not want to look up on Google. Um, yeah, that came up in a conversation too, and I won't even use the word. But it was inappropriate when translated into English. That's the point. Which is, kind of the point of this podcast today. Where is the line on free speech, if there is a line? Um, Personally, I'm very hesitant to draw a line for reasons that I'll be explaining. I'm not exactly sure where our current guest is. Today's guest is on this. I'm going to guess that he's far away from me, uh, being English and all. But we'll let him kind of define himself as we get there. Now, one of the nice things about being me is that my livelihood does not in any way depend on anyone. I don't have a boss that can tell me what to do or fire me. Although I have fired myself many times, and because of the difficulty in finding better employees, hire myself back immediately. But that's just the way those kinds of things go. Um, but that doesn't mean that I haven't been a quote victim of censorship. Um, I don't know if censorship is always the right word to describe it, but self censorship like would qualify here too. Now on this one, I'm pretty sure my guest has had to do quite a bit. I'm sure he's had to self censor. But I had a blog for many years that I took down about 6 to 8 months after COVID, because sorry, but people were lunatics, and I wasn't worried about the free speech angle. I wasn't worried about the First Amendment part. I was actually worried about the Second Amendment part. Psychos coming through my door and what I might have to do, and I didn't want that on my conscience. Now there's still psychos out there, um, but I am tempted sometimes to reopen up that blog and bring out some of the oldies but goodies, because some of it applies to the modern times, our current times, things that face us, that for the last 10 to 15 years, I and others have been working through. And, it's true. Yeah, if I must say, sometimes I feel like a prophet, but not enough of what I've said comes true to qualify, in case you are wondering. But some of it's right up there. And the connection between the reduction in speech and um, the progress of liberty, we'll say, is one of those live rails that I think still applies today. And at times over the years, I've warned about. For example, I had a blog post about when they, I don't remember who was in charge of the domain registrations at the time, but they started hunting the internet for websites that they didn't approve, and they shut down the actual domain, so you couldn't even find them. I mean, that's a pretty rascally thing to do, and again, that'll come up today. Other places where I've had exchanges with the free thought police, I don't know how to describe them, would be any any number of times I have tried to advertise or promote my content on Facebook, the old Twitter, YouTube, Google. It's just crazy the things that you cannot say without tripping their sensors, which is one of the points that one of the not the points I'll make. It's one of the things that provokes me to my view is that you have people who have decided what constitutes as reasonable thought, and of course, there's there's no way to know who they are. I mean, you can't reason with them, you can't negotiate with them, and it's a good thing that I don't depend on anyone for my livelihood because if I did, the inability to advertise on those platforms would be a problem. Now, I was thinking about doing a little clip here, actually, of a promotion that I'm trying to do on YouTube, but just because of time, I'm gonna keep going here. I have a just as a explanation. I posted something, an excerpt from one of my recent podcasts, telling the story of how I had two brain surgeons giving me contradictory advice or guidance on what to do with my daughter's brain surgery. She was on the table at the time, and this is the message that YouTube gave me as to why they would not promote this ad. Clickbait. Apparently, it was clickbait. And I don't know, ads that use negative life events such as death, acts. This is the only thing I can even think. And I'm sure that it's an algorithm that did it. I'm sure there's not a person sitting out there um, hunting for posts by Anthony Horvath. But that's my point. I mean, these things get built into the system, and then you can't escape it. And if you happen to watch that video, I happen to think it's a very critical, a life-saving point to make. And I go on and actually in that same podcast to talk about how with the difficulty being when you begin to rely on experts is there are always experts that contradict, but it's your life on the line. And so what if you can't access those other viewpoints? You're SOL, as I say. Another time where I was censored, where I think that it matters, was just as COVID started. I put out this book. So I should maybe give just a little bit of backstory. Uh, I bought masks. I began stocking up in my house like the third week of January of 2020 because the World Health Organization assured me that China said that COVID would not be contagious. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, well, shit, I better stock up because it's probably contagious then. So and that included buying a bunch of masks. But then as things settled down and I began taking stock of things, I did what I thought any normal person would want to do is I'd want to make sure that they actually work. Because if you think back to March, April, there was still, some ambiguity, on what we were dealing with. And if I'm going to depend on masks to save my life and the life of my family, then I should make sure that they actually work. And the research was not very extensive that was out there pre-COVID. But what we did have said that masks don't work nearly as well as we think they do. And one of the studies that I uncovered says that basically if you one of the big dangers of relying on the mask is it gives you a false sense of security. And it can be for any number of reasons. It could be because you expect that thing is actually going to filter what you think it's going to filter, or it could be you put yourself into situations that will be a little bit more daring because you think that you are protected. One of the early studies was done with the U.S. Marines, and they locked up the Marines, and you're allowed to do that to Marines, and you're not until COVID, you weren't allowed to do that to the people either, but you were allowed to do that to the Marines. And they found that even after very, very carefully locking up and isolating these Marines, the most draconian isolation measures that they could come up with, uh, wearing all the best masks, COVID still spread. Um, Now, when I began learning about this and actually looking at the research, my big concern was people. Well, first of all, they're going to make us wear these stupid masks. And at that time, you were allowed to wear underwear on your face, bear in mind. So the cloth masks were still the rage here for a good solid year until finally they said, well, maybe the N95s, but that's, you know, that's an improvement, but not still not great. So my thought was people are going to depend on this, and in doing so, they're going to put their lives on the line. They're gonna trust this measure, and it's not going to be able to do what they want it to do. And for some people, they're going to get away with it, but for others, who we might call the more vulnerable, they're going to rely on it, and they're going to potentially die. So the that's actually in the product description of this book. I published it. I don't know. Some fact checker can find out for me. It was like November of 2020, maybe. I don't know if it was later than that. Um, and it was removed from the marketplace within a week. It was gone, just quietly shut down. So yeah, alternate viewpoint, in my opinion, still justifiably could have was part of an important part of the discourse that could have actually saved lives. And Amazon, I'm sure, didn't single me out. I'm sure they did what they just followed the lead of other organizations did, like Twitter at the time, and just said, "Here's the narrative. If it doesn't fit the narrative, shut it up." At just the time when hearing alternate viewpoints was actually exactly what was needed, because that's the thing with free speech. Like many other things, it's not when everyone agrees that the lone voice is most critical. Excuse me, I'm not saying that right. It's exactly when everyone seems to be in a group think that the one voice out there who looks at the information in a different way and says, hey, look at this in this way. And if that person is not allowed to speak, then God only knows what will happen. So I don't have a link to this book in the description. I stand by what it was at the time, but granted, there has been a lot of research after that, which frankly I don't trust. I figure any study that has come after COVID, whether for or advanced, there's no way there, I would have to sit down with those people and interview each one of them to find out how much of their agenda has fueled their views on masks one way or the other. So I prefer all the stuff. Only looked at the studies really before COVID, and I think that's probably your best chance to actually find the truth, unless you set up a mannequin and shoot virus particles through it with a virus gun or something. I don't know. I'd look at something like that. At any rate, this podcast is not about this, but it was an example of where um, censorship, was very direct to me. In fact, we're going to get rid of that right here. We're about 15 minutes into this, and I realize that I haven't told you to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Man, I feel like such a mercenary person doing it. Like, that's so shameful. On the other hand, you could be watching anything else. And the fact that you're watching this and you've spent this much time, it means a lot to me. More than ever, now that I've become a podcaster, I appreciate the fact that people spend any time with me at all. Did I mention the grumpy old git thing? So at this point, I would like to bring in our guest. And we had some technical issues on my end. So I'm going to bring in Danny Fleckno from England. I mentioned that part. And hopefully everyone can hear him right away. Here we go. Nope, just me. It's just me. Where'd he go? Hold on, folks. It's okay. Oh, over my shoulder as usual.
That's
Hold on a
disturbing.
minute. Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind.
Testing, testing.
Okay, keep talking because I can hear you, but I need to make sure my audience can hear you.
Okay, very honoured to be one of the 5 people that you interact with this week. And a real schoolboy error. While I've got you, to wait till 15 minutes in to say like and subscribe. You're supposed to do that at the start
I know,
before anyone's had a chance to decide whether
I
or not
know.
they like it.
I'm such a hack. Your
Yeah.
audio's coming through just fine, by the way.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I'm sure that I could see you off screen shaking your head, sighing, rolling your eyes,
Yeah.
uh, probably dying 1,000 deaths on the inside every now and then. But we've been together, talking together for a long time, so it's those emotions are not new to you.
No. One of the things I was thinking is, just commiserations for the terrible censorship that you've experienced.
I can't. You're making fun of me right now, aren't you?
I would never do that.
Yeah,
Not on
yeah,
your own
right.
podcast. That would be rude.
Well, it'd be all right. I'm making sure our heads are the same size here.
That's a big ask.
Okay, let's see here. Here we go. All
Yeah,
right.
but then if I lean back, I'm
Well, then
anyway.
that's
Carry on.
that's
Sorry,
on
we're
you then.
wasting the audience's time with this stuff.
Absolutely, cut it out. So, I said I would let you define yourself. I didn't really state very plainly what my views are, but it should be pretty clear that I'm pretty laissez-faire about it. So do you want to start out with where are you at?
Did you want me to give my background or just my view on this?
Your view on this, but you're
Okay.
you're right. Some background might be helpful. So maybe.
Well, I suppose, given that you've been talking about it, I suppose it's worth saying that I work in public health in the UK.
Yeah, yeah,
That might
right.
be relevant later.
It could be.
On the topic at hand, um, my instinctive response to should there be any limits on almost any right you can name is yeah, obviously. And just to explain that, I think with almost any right that I can think of, there's going to become a point where one person's exercise of that right starts to impede on someone else's right, maybe to exercise the same right, maybe to exercise a different right. And then we're into a conflict of rights situation. So we can be all absolutist about this and champion this kind of free speech or die kind of thing, which I notice, or I used to notice before I got off X, was popular. But I don't think it's realistic. I think that at the point where person A's free speech starts to impede on someone else's right to live a life free from harassment, say, or just live their life. If we're getting into incitement to murder, for example, that's a place where one person's right to free speech could very concretely impact on someone else's right to life. And even right to life isn't absolute. I'm certainly not an advocate of the death penalty, but if someone comes to the front door of my house and is threatening violence against my family, then they are to some degree, unless they give up before this becomes necessary, but they're potentially forfeiting their right to life in the service of my right to defend my family. So there's some food for thought, I suppose. Feel free
Hold,
to.
hold, hold, hold on a minute. I don't think I've ever heard you express that sentiment in our entire time before.
What, self-defense?
Yeah, that you would. In fact, you scoffed. I sent you the book Fallout, and you were like, oh
I read
well,
that.
yeah. You kind of like, eh,
I mean,
you
it
know.
was a It was a long book. I read it. I thought it was okay. I didn't think I gave you a line by line critique.
No, you certainly did not. But I mean, do you? Because like I know that in England, if somebody comes into your home and you kill them, uh, very often you're the one that's prosecuted.
Very often, you're going to go with very often. I think you're referring to one court case from about 30 years ago.
I don't
Tony
know.
Martin, right? Tony Martin. That's the case you're thinking about.
Well, I'm certainly that's going to be in there. Let's see,
Yeah.
can you be arrested for self-defense? No, there was another one more recently than that. Killing a home invader. I know. I don't.
This is what the
have
fans
Jamie.
tune in for. It's
If I
live
had
Google.
Jamie,
What people are here for.
Let's see here. Jamie. God damn it! I don't have a Jamie. Let's see here.
Is that a Joe Rogan reference?
Yeah. You probably
Okay.
don't watch him either, do you?
I've seen clips, but not enough to be familiar with them.
Yeah, we do not have a
Never
stand your ground or castle doctrine. Self-defense is permitted, but must be proportional to the threat. Simple trespass
Sure.
does not allow for lethal force. So I guess on that view, this is kind of like we've heard this on occasion here in America in different states. So like if someone breaks into your house and somehow you are able to ascertain that all they want is your TV, then then you're allowed to you must actually let them do that, and you've got to go away.
That's not that I can't even dignify that by calling it a straw man. No,
No,
if someone
I've heard
breaks
that.
into my house and I can subdue them and render them harmless without killing them, then that is clearly the right decision.
No, that's not a straw man at all. I mean, that might be your particular view. I'm saying that there are people with that view.
Okay. Well, I'll let you take it up with them then. I'm the only one who's here.
I told you I would let you define yourself, and Danny Fleckno from 20 years ago, I think would have said something different.
Very possibly.
Which is why I'm letting you define yourself.
Okay.
So you would subdue them. So I think the problem is like with this is not a Second Amendment podcast. This is a First Amendment podcast. So, but
okay.
I mean, I think the question is like, how do you ascertain the intentions of this person? I mean, to me, so like here, I'll put it in another term. We'll bring it back to the free speech part of it. You, I think, would say that no one should be allowed to say, "I'm going to murder you."
Or to to call for. I don't think that's incitement exactly. That's a threat which could cause someone serious fear and alarm if they took it seriously.
Yeah. So isn't that good?
I think the point I'm trying to make is, and obviously the devil is in the details about where we draw these lines, but all potential rights that we could discuss at some point butt up against other people's rights. And, as I can't remember who said, your right to swing your fists around in the air at your leisure, that right stops right here at the end of my nose.
Yeah, right.
Yes. That's my view on it. There are trade-offs.
So for free speech, one of the places that would manifest for me is like you have the right to speak, but that doesn't mean that you have the right to come into my house and sit at my table and have your speech, right?
Sure. And I guess
but
from
if he's standing on this,
from a publisher point of view, the fact that someone has the right to speak doesn't mean that they have the right to be published in any newspaper or other media platform that they wish to be published in.
Sure. Yeah. So, but that's because that's a case of their speech, right? right?
Yeah, I know. Well, we this is these are deep waters to get into, and relevant to your complaints about censorship. But obviously, there's a big debate about how the big tech platforms should be considered, whether they're publishers or whether they are effectively the market square, the town square. What do you call it?
Yeah, town square.
Yeah. Are they the equivalent of the baker who should get to decide whether to refuse service to someone who wants them to bake a cake with a message on that they disagree with, or are they simply a passive recipient of anything that anyone wants to put up on them? I don't think anybody wants that, really, because completely unmoderated platforms. I mean, I've heard even the Infowars message boards have pretty strict moderation policies. So if you don't have any moderation, then the whole internet becomes 4chan or 8chan or whatever it is, and we're just drowning in Nazi memes and videos of people being eaten by sharks. And not everybody wants that. They want to use platforms that don't continually deluge them with whatever is the most algorithmically boosted content by virtue of being shocking or different, or having that X factor, which is not always beneficial or pleasant.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that things that are not beneficial or pleasant should be banned in their entirety. I'm in favor of people being able to view things wherever they want to, but if I think a social media platform that's a private business should be able to have whatever moderation policies they want, really, and then people should be able to decide whether or not they want to use it.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the blog posts that no one can read anymore. It contains a quote from the Facebook legal defense team saying that they are basically a public square, and so the government shouldn't be able to do such and such. But on the other hand, if they really are a public square, then they should not be able to censor anything unless it's like what is deemed as criminal free speech or criminal speech, we'll say. So they want their cake and they want to eat it too. And I think that's the dilemma with the big tech people.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, so it's ironic that there's really only one place that you can get free speech, really, as far as big tech goes, and that is X. And as soon as it did that, you left.
Well, it became a place that I didn't want to be. The recommendations abruptly seemed to turn to videos of someone who doesn't realize they're about to be hit by a car, or that they're about to touch the third rail and be electrocuted. And
those were your recommendations. Those are the algorithm is from your own search habits, so it's just delivering you what it thought it knew from you.
I mean, I've been off it for probably, has it been a year? I'm not sure. I've been off it for a while, so I may be confusing the streams. Maybe it was for you, or
I don't know.
But it became somewhere that felt felt unpleasant, and I didn't feel like it was. It's worth reflecting on whether certain habits are improving your mood and your views of the world, or degrading them. And the first time I used Twitter, interestingly, was during there was some riots in London, 2011, I think, and I was living there at the time. And what I found on that occasion that it was really good for was that I could search for hashtag London riots and put in my postcode or my borough and get up-to-date information about exactly what was happening, and what people were saying was happening in different places. I think it's probably still good for that, although I haven't experimented with it at all since I deleted my account.
Well, I have my own problems with X, but it's not the speech angle per se. Not that you would have seen them because you're not there to see it anymore. But one of the things that I've complained about is that it seems the algorithm seems to emphasize showing me content that the people I follow have responded to. And I don't want to see the content that they've responded to. I want to see their content, the thing that, the things that they post.
Mm.
And if I've told Elon Musk this probably half dozen times. He doesn't listen. I
No,
like he's just too busy, I think, for me. But anyway, but I've said, listen, if I wanted to hear what that person had to say, I would have followed that person. But that person's a nut job, and I don't care what that person has to say. But
right.
there seems to be no way on X to sort that out. So my utility of it is pretty low. But I will say that it's been impossible to advertise almost anything on Facebook, YouTube. I think I said one other one earlier too. I don't remember. And the old Twitter, but on the new X, like I can advertise anything. Like it's with very 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 few exceptions have anything that I've posted been flagged. So I'll give them that at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't really comment, but I'm happy for you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So are you on Blue Sky now?
No, is that a competitor?
Oh, all right. Well, I'm not going to say anything more about it then.
No, I'm doing fine without a sort of algorithmically generated news feed.
Yeah.
I check in on the news in other ways, and
Yeah.
when
That's
I
fair.
when I have that moment when I could be using up my free moments just doing that, I read a book or something instead.
Sure. Okay. So before we get too far in, I wanted to make sure that I go over something that I mentioned in the just give me a second and I'll get this up here. And we'll get your head a little bit higher. Where is your head? There it is. Yeah. So because this comes out on in conversations about this. Obviously, I'm not saying that you did, but something that you often hear is this, and I feel like as a public service, I ought to take the time to let people know that they're living a lie um, about whether or not you can shout fire in a burning theater. And this came up as a line from Oliver Wendell Holmes. And ironically, the person who was offended, this article talks about it pretty well. You can find lots of articles that talk about this. So the fact that you don't know this means that you don't research anything, and you probably should become someone who researches things. But it's pretty easy to find anything that will corroborate what I'm saying here. Oliver Wendell Holmes actually took aim at a socialist who was opposed to conscription in World War One, and did a pamphlet against that. And that person was sent to jail for it. And what was the actual charge? I don't know if this article gives it. But yeah,
It's a
he
little bit
went.
more. It's a little bit more niche and bizarre than that, isn't it? I thought they were Jewish pacifists, and they wrote only in Yiddish, which certainly limits the damage that they could do.
Well, there were three cases, and maybe one of the other ones is the one that you're thinking of. This one in particular. Well, I can see if I can open up the image and see if it's in Yiddish. Nope, I can see the Constitution. Maybe the other ones was in Yiddish. One of them was in written in German because it was a German anti-war kind of thing. But all of them went to jail for basically criticizing the war. I think it was the Espionage Act.
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. So it was basically because of like war powers had been invoked or whatever. So Oliver Wendell Holmes used that. So it's ironic, like you would never think today that criticizing the draft should get you sent to jail, right? So, this is the context of that statement. But a few years after this, even Oliver Wendell Holmes began to realize he had overstepped and began pulling back. And I found another, wrong one here. This is a 2012 article that you can find that kind of goes over all the court cases and whatnot. So you can yell fire in a crowded theater. It would
Thank you.
not be advisable. So the thing is first of all, if the theater's, this is the point that they all make, if the theater's actually on fire, then that's exactly what you want people to do.
Yes.
Right. And that's I think the problem with when we start talking about limiting free speech is that the world might be on fire, and what you need is someone to stand up and, hey, yell that. And if we're in the business of closing the Overton window and making it so narrow that those voices can never be heard, then you'll have a bunch of people die in a theater fire, I guess.
Well, I think I wouldn't presume to speak for them, but I would think that the Jewish socialists, pacifists who were sent to prison would have argued that the world was on fire.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. How's
in
that?
1914 or whatever it was.
You're not arguing with me, then? You're agreeing, right? With that.
I don't know if I'm agreeing with you. I agreed with that narrow point.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously you don't want to curtails on speech that could be used to prevent someone from drawing attention to a very real danger.
Right. Yeah. And so the problem is, how do you decide that in advance? Right.
Yes, and that's what I understand. Now, I suspect that most of your audience is American, but I'm not. So
correct.
I'm going to try not to have you like too parochially focused here on just constitutional stuff. But it's prior restraint, isn't it? Called that the First Amendment forbids that you can't judge in advance what speech should be forbidden.
Sure. I'm not. I guess I'm not really sure of it framed in that way, but you're British, so you probably know.
Well, this is something I think that the late great Christopher Hitchens wrote about. I know you're a big fan. That it was there was something suspicious about people who, from the morality point of view, certainly would sort of go through pages and pages to find the word that they would be offended by. And you sort of suspect their motives. And he told a great story about Dr. Samuel Johnson, the compiler of the First English Dictionary, who was visited by lots of people after it was published to congratulate him on his great achievement. And one of the groups of visitors was a group of respectable ladies of London, who said, Dr. Johnson, we wish to congratulate you on not including any rude or obscene words in your dictionary. And he said, ladies, I congratulate you on having been able to look them up.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel like we're all over the map here. We've lost a lot. So bring it back to the last touchstone that I have, which, going back to this fire analogy and putting it to bed, so to speak, is Oliver Wendell Holmes himself eventually repudiated it in so many words, and then future court cases said that's just not the right way to handle it. So the fact that people keep using it, you need to stop. If that's you need to stop using it. You can say that it's much more nuanced than that. That's fine. But like, and and then still use it. But for my purposes here, like if I was going to mount a defense for free speech, like I see free speech as um like the chief instrument to allowing liberty to even exist. And there, it might not be exclusive. There probably very well are other things that I would agree with on it. But your options are to either let people speak or have them be silent and then act in a like you basically just you pat down the flames of their emotions and their rhetoric, and then they're gonna speak in some other way. And inevitably, what happens with societies is when you begin censoring and shutting down speech, it tends to be the speech of the very things that would have preserved the liberty that was lost. And so it's no wonder that dictators and whatnot, the very first thing they do is seize the organs of the media and the papers or whatnot. So the challenge in that, of course, is the recognition that just because a newspaper exists doesn't mean that you have you can force the newspaper to put your editorial in it. Like that doesn't follow. But you should be able to write your editorial and post it wherever the hell you want. On telephone poles or whatever. And if it's a public space, in that space, it should be. I have trouble thinking of any limits.
Yeah, I mean, look, I tend to agree. I think we're in a where I disagree with the whole sunlight is the best disinfectant approach is that the way that the information landscape is set up now is that it tends to boost stuff that isn't necessarily most likely to be accurate. So it's very easy. We think we've got access to all the information in the world, and we do, but the economy of that information tends to boost the stuff that is surprising or particularly different. 2 + 2 = 5 gets more likes and boosts than 2 + 2 = 4 because it's novel, it's interesting, it's different, it's not boring. And certainly what we find in the health sphere is that most of the information that we have to convey, if we want to do it responsibly and give all the caveats and be clear about the limitations of what we know, which I know is something that you're very keen on, what you end up with there is something that is not easily digestible. It's going to be long. It's not punchy. It's not going to compete well with someone who says all of X is bad for you and all of Y is good for you. You should take Y, and by the way, I'm selling it in my personal store. The simple, and because simple, usually at best incomplete, sometimes flat out wrong, information gets boosted higher and therefore comes into more people's awareness as probably true because it's got so many likes and clicks and forwards and retweets or whatever. So we're in a situation where just saying sure, all let everyone speak and let everyone be equal in terms of where their speech can go and how much their speech can be seen by everyone. That's setting up for a situation where simple, distinctive, and often wrong narratives are going to proliferate and win the I don't want to say information war. That's too Alex Jones, but you know what I mean. We've only got so much headspace for information. There's too much of it out there to take it all in, and unless you've got reputable sources that you can trust, which is really important, and one of the great tragedies of the loss of public trust in institutions. You know, you're swimming in a sea of content without any ability to breathe underwater.
Okay, so I mean, I sympathize with that and resonate with it, but I don't understand what are you advocating then? Are you saying that the approved voices should be able to exclude the other ones? Are you saying if your institution puts out a statement, then it should be the only thing that people see on the algorithms for a week, and no one should see anything contrary? Or I don't. I mean, I'm with you on the problem, but I don't.
Yeah.
What are you
Well,
proposing as the solution?
I don't have a perfect solution to the problem. I mean, one of the solutions is that um, public serving organizations need to get a lot better at communicating to the public in ways that are simple and easily accessible, but that don't elide important details in a way that reduces that can lead to a further reduction in public trust when people find out that they've only been given half a story.
Yeah.
Weirdly, the same dynamic does not apply, or it doesn't seem to apply to, conspiracy theorists who just do a sort of scattergun of wild claims, and no one goes back and like says, hang on, you said that ... It doesn't seem to affect their credibility when they get things dramatically wrong. They just move on to the next thing. Whereas, governmental organizations don't seem to have that free pass in people's minds. But speaking as as a public servant in this country, I'm very conscious of the need for us to get better at putting out information that helps people be well informed and that can at least compete with the stuff that otherwise just gets algorithmically boosted. I'm not in favor of censoring anything under normal circumstances, but I think it's an interesting thought experiment. So Oliver Wendell Holmes was operating in the context of a national emergency of sorts. I mean, it sounds like America was just starting to dip its toe in the First World War at that stage. You could argue back and forth about whether that's enough of a national emergency to justify censorship or control of speech. But would you say that there is no conceivable circumstance? The UN are go as Red Dawn as you like. The UN are coming across the Mexican border with a million tanks, and still we want every voice to be heard, including highly algorithmically boosted collaborators who are telling people to just hand in their guns to the stockpile of the amnesty on their street corners, where they'll give you a receipt and tell you well done.
I felt like there was a direct question put to me, but I have to say I don't know what it is still. I'm sorry.
Is there can you think of a situation of unequivocal emergency and crisis where it would be appropriate to censor certain messages?
And so your example was, the Mexicans are coming over and we need to disarm.
Okay, sorry. That was too abstract.
Okay.
If someone has hacked the
I think I get the question,
the nuclear
now,
codes,
at least, but it's just funny to think of that scenario and everyone turning in their guns.
I was trying to give you something that would appeal to your your biggest worries.
Sure. Right.
If someone's hacked the nuclear codes, should they be able to post those on X?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, someone's got the formula for weaponizing anthrax in your basement.
It's already out there. You can already get it. You probably already
Okay.
get the nuclear codes too. Probably actually. But
It's probably password 1, isn't it?
yeah, right. 1, 2, 3. Someone to remind me to change my password. That's a Spaceballs reference, by the way.
Okay. I hear
Yeah,
there's a sequel coming.
that's what I heard too. But I doubt it's as bad / good as the original. So, but I will wait to see what the critics say. So, for the problem is like the question that you're putting forward uh, is framed in such a way that the people who possess the information know absolutely unequivocally that their information is rock solid and allows for no other interpretation of that information, right? And so the problem with any kind of scheme in that way is that there's no one really in the world who is clever enough that we could say, you know what, that person's always right. You know, he gets his information right all the time. His interpretation is right all the time. So, you know, by all means, he tells us XYZ, we're going to do XYZ. I mean, that person does not exist.
Agreed.
So the challenge is that whatever situation or scenario that we're trying to wrestle with, it's very possible that they got it wrong. So I might be willing to say, and I feel like I need to like stab myself here at I have my letter opener here ready to go, which is also a fantastic back scratcher. But you have to be gentle. I've discovered. Um,
Good.
you know, something like in terms of like a moratorium. But the problem with the moratorium is that the authorities never end, right? It just they tend to go on and on. Whenever an emergency is declared, the emergency just keeps on going. You know, that kind of thing.
Is that true? Think COVID restrictions are still in place?
Where?
Anywhere.
I don't
Are
know.
they in place for you? They're not in
w-
place for me.
well, no, they're not in place for me. But
Okay.
you know, I'm not actually absolutely certain that. So I mean, that seems like a kind of a pedantic shot because, you know, well, it's 2025, right? So like, but there were certainly emergency orders that were still in effect in some states to 2023, if not beyond, which is well beyond what reason would have justified. We could figure that out pretty quick if we had Jamie here. California went on a full 12 months to 18 months longer than, you know, a lot of the other states. And a lot of that, to be fair, had to do with money, federal money, because while something is a disaster, or emergency, you're allowed to do certain things that you otherwise wouldn't be. So probably it was an open secret even in those places that it wasn't an emergency, but they kept it going. But like if you were to say, to go back to what I was saying, the moratorium would be like, okay, for 3 days we're the messengers. And like I said, I want to stab myself in the heart for even suggesting this because I don't believe it would be followed. But like I could almost see like a parameter like that. Like what are you talking about? Like a meteor is coming to the earth, right? And they're saying,
Okay.
you know, for 3 days we need your undivided attention because we want to try to get through this, you know, the best possible way. You know,
We need to get everyone into the shelters, and we can't be having the public debate with the people who say there's no meteor coming.
right. You know,
Right.
but there has to be a time limit on that is rock solid, and it has to be accompanied with it should immediately be like any law that justified something like that, and I can't even believe that I even proposed it. It would have to be in the same law, it would have to be within 1 month there have to be elections of all the people who were involved in that, like to be
Hmm.
held accountable practically instantly. And then another provision of the law that says if this does not happen, if elections do not happen within 1 month of the invocation of this, then after another 30 days, you're just allowed to shoot them in the street. Like
Wow,
they're not even agreeing to an election, right? These
that
are
escalated quickly.
well, I'm just thinking about the way these things are. If there's not a if no one ever goes to jail, no one ever goes to prison for their excesses, right? So I'm just saying, if you're saying, hey, we're not going to do an election, then you're not really living in a place that is it's not the place that you thought it was.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I mean, I can see I can think of examples where that might not be possible. As you were talking, I thought, I don't know if this is true or not, but I could certainly see some logic if right now the Ukrainian state is intervening pretty hard on purveyors of Russian propaganda in the nation,
Yeah.
and I think they've reasonably made the case that they can't have elections right now because all focus has to be on national defense. There's got to be an election at some point. You're right. Otherwise, you're not a democratic country anymore. But
Yeah,
um,
I think that's a really good example. And I was thinking about Putin actually on the other side of that as the guy who abuses that, but the Ukrainians, yeah, to me that is messed up. I don't you've got to have the elections. It's like it's an extension of free speech to be able to have the election, right? That's if you're not able to speak in that way, then you are deprived of a fundamental human right,
yeah,
not
and
to
there's
vote but to speak.
yeah, and there's certain very extreme circumstances where it might have to be delayed, but if there's no prospect of it ever happening again, then you're suddenly living in a different country.
Yeah. So, thoughts on how long Ukraine should wait? Another 5 years?
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not. I have no expertise to advise them on that. Okay, so well, I feel like we've got somewhere here where we can both conceive of situations where, at least on a temporary and limited basis, there should be limits to rights that we both consider important, such as free speech. But there's plenty of others. I feel like I'm very supportive of the right of people to live their lives without harassment from the authorities. But if I'm walking down the street minding my own business and the police get a report that just down the road uh, someone who looks like a nerdier version of the brother-in-law from Breaking Bad just killed someone, then it would make perfect sense to me in retrospect that I suddenly get tackled to the floor and handcuffed and
Sure.
taken to the police station. And the
Exigent
time to
circumstances. Yeah.
the yeah the time to fight back against that is not there and then. It's later with my legal representative.
So by now, I hope that in our long years of exchanges, you recognize that um, my libertarian angle is tempered heavily by the idea of a need for checks and balances, which like strict anarchy wouldn't quite allow. And it's the checks and balances where I think things are often messed up. So like if there's an exigent circumstance, you look like some bad guy, like from a show. I mean, other than the way you normally look, then you should be. Yeah, you can understand in that circumstance why you were tackled. On the other hand, they shouldn't execute you in the street, right?
Yep,
Right. There
less
should
of a
be.
But
Right.
sure,
But on the other hand, if it was normal for the authorities to execute people on the street,
that would
then
be different.
then
Yeah.
it would be different. So the whole premise of like in that scenario is that you have to have for you to submit and comply with what's happening to you is an assurance that you will have an opportunity to see that justice is done in the sense that like if they went too far, you're not dead, right? you know
Yeah. Yeah.
so the problem with like the free speech part of it like is that in most places where we are talking about suppressing speech, it's the organization. It's not really the corporations that bother us as much, because at least in principle, unless they're claiming to be a public space kind of thing, most people will recognize, well, hey, it has its own right to speech, and there's limits to what we can compel it to do. But when the government gets involved, now you have the coercive powers of the state, which includes the ability to like imprison. And so now you start saying, well, where's your checks and balances? And this is the problem in America, I think. I can't speak for the UK, but in America, um, if you have your speech censored by the government, it'll be through the medium, like some person in the administration or in some bureaucracy or whatever will put in a call to some Twitter exec. I think you were still on Twitter X when this was all coming out in regards to like what happened with COVID. And they said, we don't like this message, and all of a sudden these people are kicked off the platform. And for what? You don't know the name of the person who works at X that did it. There's no transparency between the conversation that the politician or whatever had with the X person. And so now you're out of luck. And for some of these people, for in different respects, their livelihoods did depend on maybe not like maybe they weren't influencers, but like then were unable to sell their, make a living in some other way. So when things get put in like, um, so there's no checks and balances even possible in that scheme. Like there's no place where you could ever get your fingers on things. Like the cop who tackles you, theoretically, while you're lying there with a bleeding face, you could look at his badge number and jot
Sure.
that down in blood on the sidewalk, right?
Yes.
With the people who do this stuff these days, they're way too clever to be identified.
Well, that's that's the joy of the internet, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, look, I think some of that is right. I think. I mean, there's also a bit of a grievance and outrage machine built up around this, where influencers will deliberately. I'm not directing this at you, by the way, but influencers will deliberately post something that they know violates community standards or whatever, to get it blocked or removed, so that they can cry censorship and then be a free speech martyr and boost their profile that way. There's a lot of that.
Really?
So, I think there's all sides are trying to weaponize this issue for, or there are people on all sides, I should say, more precisely, trying to weaponize this issue for personal gain. And to some extent, the internet is the new Wild West, and we're still finding our way around it. How long did it take for us to adapt as a civilization to the printing press, and then later to radio? It took a couple of wars in both cases. So, fingers crossed we can get up to speed with this new technology faster than that.
So I'm not going to ask you of a particular example because I don't want you to get sued
Oh,
of a person doing that. But you think that happens a lot? People who intentionally try to get themselves censored?
Well, I can't look into their hearts.
All right.
But I see a lot of people making a lot of hay out of having been censored in some way, rightly or wrongly, and drawing conclusions from that and encouraging their audience to draw conclusions from it, which I don't know are justified. I mean, this is one of the arguments for the sunlight is the best disinfectant approach, because censoring really, truly fringe and obnoxious voices, whether they be neo-Nazis or whoever, it does give them a sort of sheen, a superficial sheen of a kind of lone gunman sort of, they must be saying something that the authorities are afraid of. They must be on the right track somehow. Otherwise, why would they be being shut down? So that's a risk that the censors run, and it's a trend that some influencers take, I'm sure, knowing advantage of, to gain that kudos for themselves of having been banned or having been censored, because that adds power to their message.
Well, I'm not going to dwell on it, but it seems to me if someone's got 5 million followers and suddenly there's accounts deleted, they have no audience. So I'm having trouble seeing the
They
advantage.
can still, put the posts on lampposts, like you were saying.
What?
Look, I don't know. I'm not on the same page as you are about these private companies necessarily having to be considered the public square. I think they're to some degree publishers, and that gives them significant responsibilities, which they are mostly quite delinquent in, to make sure that, as a business, they're not serving up things that are factually incorrect, toxic, destructive, whatever. And so, yeah, I agree. They want it both ways. They want to be considered a publisher when it suits them and not when it doesn't. But I think, I don't know. I think that they are. There's at least some justification to saying, as a private company, they are within their rights to say, we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone for reasons of our own.
Unless, yeah. So, but let's go back to your list, things that are toxic or misinformation or whatever. I mean, according to who? I mean, that's the rub, isn't it? I mean, in your opinion, those things are misinformation or toxic or whatever was in your list.
I'm not. I wouldn't set myself up as the arbiter of this. It's a very hard job, but it's one that the social media companies do a noticeably bad job of, and I guess no wonder. It's a very difficult thing to get right most of the time.
So what I thought I heard you advocating, and maybe you're not, is that some other entity, namely the government, needs to be involved in holding publishers accountable for their content. Otherwise, I mean, are you just saying that the government shouldn't be involved at all, but the publishers should just be, more deferential to I don't know who?
Well, what an analogy I've heard used here is, let's say, for the sake of argument, we had some sort of hamburger chain that, everywhere you go, it's there. And, they might have started out as a little mom and pop shop, but now they're all over the world. They're in every single town. And they are producing, millions of hamburgers a second. And they said, because we produce so many millions of hamburgers, we cannot guarantee that a percentage of them are not going to be poisonous. I don't think that would be accepted. That seems like a bad business model, and I feel like as consumers, we would take a decision that if a percentage of the hamburgers produced by this company were going to be very bad for us, then we wouldn't go and shop there, and there would be a certain amount of market forces taking its effect and either putting them out of business or making them change their business model. I mean, I've withdrawn myself both from certain social media platforms and also from eating at certain large fast food chains on that very basis. But if a company like that, a hypothetical company, I hasten to add, I'm not talking about anyone that might get me sued. If that was the case, I feel like there would be an argument for government at some level to step in and say, yeah, we know you're making a lot of money out of this, but it's not acceptable for you to have a business model that, you know, poisons a certain percentage of your customers. I think there's been some suggestions that approach ought to be applied to social media. Now, there's a big difference, of course, between poisoning the body and poisoning of the mind.
Yeah, one's a little bit more measurable than the other.
One is more objectively measurable. That's absolutely right. That is not a perfect analogy, but I guess I was just trying to play devil's avocado here.
But yeah, well, I'm a little bit murky on where it is. It seems to me like you're trying really hard not to say that you think the government should hold these publishers to account. That's what it seems like you're trying to avoid, because your options are let the market take care of it and free speech handle it.
Yeah.
Let the corporation completely self-police, but based on assumingly, you know, the market reaction, or some entity has to impose itself on the publisher, and I can only think of one that has the ability to do that if it's not the people.
Yeah, it's a difficult problem. You state the dilemma very clearly.
So you do want the government to do it?
I didn't say that. I don't think the government would do a very good job of it.
Well, you got the government stepping in when you've got a percentage of toxic hamburgers, and that's your analogy with the free speech and the publishers and their toxic hamburgers, but not the government stepping in. So who does?
I know what you want me to say, but I'm not your performing monkey.
I thought that is exactly what you're trying to say without saying
no.
it.
What I'll say where I think the government should definitely step in, where I think national government should definitely step in.
Okay.
Is the issue of age verification.
Okay.
I think it's unacceptable that social media companies have effectively a system where if you're old enough to put in a fake date of birth, then they will assume that you're fine to see everything that they produce. We wouldn't think that was acceptable if a bar said they will serve anyone who says that they're 18 in this country, 21 in your country. We just wouldn't accept that. If someone came in who was obviously underage and they said that they were 45, that wouldn't be acceptable, and it shouldn't be acceptable, and it shouldn't be acceptable online, because the harms for children and young people are quite demonstrable. So that's one area I definitely think they should step in. In terms of regulating what speech is on the platform, I think it's a really thorny issue, and I don't have a solution for it.
Well, I did promise to ambush you, so this seems like good a time as any. But before we do, I just closed the stupid tab. See if I can get it back. History. All right, that was so stupid. So I'm setting the stage here a little bit, and yeah, it is a bit of a trap, maybe. I mean, we'll see. You familiar with this case?
I'm really sorry, that's too small for me to read on my phone.
The Douglas Mackey guy, I don't know if he actually served prison or not. He put out a meme joking that the 2016 election day was different than what it actually was,
Oh, okay.
and then they were after him. Um, he was convicted of conspiring to deprive citizens of their right to vote. This is all over a meme. I don't know if they're going to show it because, well, it got this guy
They could get into trouble. Yeah.
right. And then it was overturned literally just this month. Actually, the conviction. So like, is it the government's job to step in and like decide whether or not social media content is, malicious or just funny? Decide where humor is, and
I mean, I guess
some people would say this was
court
toxic.
decision has provided some precedent to say no. But I guess I'm only surprised he didn't get a pardon.
Well, the day's young. All right, so that just yeah, I know that. Oops, here we go. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Can you read that title?
No, I can see a picture of a blonde woman.
This is apparently some sort of fact check site. I'm trying to make it bigger for you. I don't know if it's going to work.
I don't mind you being my audio subtitles.
Are over 1,000 people arrested each month in the UK for social media posts? And apparently the answer is yes. That seems so. In America, we had one.
Mhm.
In the UK, we're
It's a smaller country.
well, it's not better in this case. 1,000, and then this person, you can just tell you just know where they are. Is being your when discussing this issue, it's important to consider how many of these arrests resulted in conviction, and it was only like only 2,000 were actually convicted. So I guess that makes it better.
Only 2,000 out of the 1,000.
Out of 12,000, yeah,
Or 12,000.
12,000, yeah,
I mean,
1,000 a month.
it's still not nice being arrested, I imagine.
I mean, this is your country, so I mean, are you not aware of this, or is this a story you're not following?
I'm
it's not
aware of it.
stories.
We, different countries have different standards when it comes to free speech, and we don't have the same constitution, and we don't have all of the same cultural norms as the US. Now, of course, from your point of view, it's crazy that anyone would have a different approach to issues of civil or basic rights than you guys do. But believe me, there are other countries in the world where they do things differently.
That's fine. So let's. I was wanting to ask you this anyway. So
Yeah.
I mean, do you believe that human rights exist? Just basically,
do you know what? I've got my. Can you see this? I got my copy of a book which starts off with the UN Declaration of Human Rights right here.
Ooh, all right. So you believe human rights exist? Okay, so we're good with that.
Okay, it exists. What do you mean by exist?
Okay, yeah. So, do we have them intrinsically just by virtue of being humans, or are they given to us by some other entity, usually the state?
I would say neither. I would say they are they're clearly a construct, rather than something that objectively exists. They didn't come into existence with the creation of the universe. They're contingent on the societies that we live in and the cultural norms that we've evolved over time.
So I feel like if we say that what we're talking about is not if if we do not say that it's intrinsic to just by virtue of being human, that then you may as well just say, I don't believe there are human rights. Or we'll say, at the very least, we have to say there's no human rights capital R. There's only human rights lowercase r, and it's really we shouldn't even be using the word rights. Call them human privileges or something.
Well, this is a semantic dance similar to your insanely restrictive definition of science from that podcast that I watched recently, which I did want to talk to you about, but I don't know if we're going to have time. But these are just because something is a contingent fact doesn't mean that it's not important. I think human rights are very important. They are an ongoing discussion within our civilizations, and clearly there are rights that we think are incredibly important. Most of us think are incredibly important in the Western world, which other cultures don't recognize at all, such as the freedom of religion, for example. That doesn't mean that it's not important. That doesn't mean that I don't think there's a right answer. But it seems it's not the same as 2 + 2 = 4. Let's put it that way.
So the problem is, and this goes back to the statement about science, is that there's this thing called equivocation, where people will use one word in one context and apply it to another word in a different context and mean something entirely different about it, but not inform the other people that they've actually just changed the context and the meaning, right? So if you're going to talk about something as being a human right, people generally are going to have a certain understanding in general that it's something that's intrinsic to being human. Now, where it comes from, how it's recognized or whatnot, I suppose we could kind of go back and forth on it. But I think most people would say, and if we're not equivocating, I think even you would say, but I could be wrong, that a human right is something that it doesn't matter in what country you live in and what society you're in. This is something that you're entitled to by virtue of just being alive as a human. So for example, if we say the right to life is a human right, I mean, I feel like you're going to say that, yeah, that no one has the right to just go around extinguishing other people. Or is that just another thing that's a cultural thing, and a country could decide to do something entirely different?
Well, I mean, clearly they could. They have throughout human history, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we're not. The reality is that different cultures have decided at different times that the right to life was conditional or only applied to certain members of the population.
So the question is, do you think they were right or wrong in doing that? Or is this, I'm not, this is above my pay grade. We can never know.
No, I think they were absolutely wrong to do that.
Okay, then. All right. So that to me is what would constitute a human right. It transcends where you're born, where you live, so on and so. You seem to be, yes, I know it's been abused. No one will deny that, but I mean, so you are with me on this.
I'm with you. I guess there's like a sort of deep ontological question here about what makes something true, which I think probably it's getting a bit into the weeds and maybe isn't worth going into here.
This is obviously why my one viewer is watching.
Well, look, I'm sure your many viewer would love to see nothing more than an hour-long discussion of the ontology of rights. But we're not going to agree on that, because if you think they came from God and I struggle with the idea of God as a concept, then we're going to think this comes from different places and perhaps have different attitudes to it as a result. But that doesn't mean that we disagree about the implementation of those rights, or whether or not a certain attitude to it is right or wrong. So yeah, I agree with you that countries and civilizations that have taken different conditional views of the right to life have been wrong to do so.
Okay. All right. So we've established that there's at least one human right.
But not one that's okay. The topic of this discussion was, are there rights that can, that are always applicable, right?
Well,
And we've
but
already agreed that there's
okay.
exceptions here, whether self-defense or whether, if you're a believer in
Sure.
the death penalty.
Where the fist hits your nose, the right stops.
Sure.
Yeah. So presumably, yeah. So, but basically, there's one human right. You assuming that a person is just walking down the street, doing nothing to no one. There's no reason or rationale that somebody else is just allowed to come and put a bullet in his brain and just say,
I agree. That would be a very hard case to defend.
okay. So now, is speech the same kind of right as that?
Well, a bit like our discussion of physical harms and psychological harms, you get into more difficult territory because I can't, off the top of my head, think of a scenario where speech will directly kill someone.
Correct. Right.
So there's scenarios in which speech can be seen as inciting or in leading less directly to someone's death. And there's many scenarios where it could be debated whether speech is more harmful, whether allowing certain types of speech is more harmful than abridging the right to speech in those conditions. And I think we've already agreed, I think, that we both see certain circumstances where the right to free speech could be justifiably overturned in limited, specific, and perhaps time critical ways for the greater good, as a consequentialist would say.
Yeah. So, but you're not really. So, in these real world situations, and that the problem is it's the real world, right? So we have to find a way to apply these things with contexts that involve millions of different perspectives, and we try to basically coexist and basically generally have the hope that someone doesn't kill us while we're walking out the street,
Yep.
things of that sort. But the problem that, to bring this back around, is you offered a defense of this trend in the UK by invoking the fact that other countries have different perspectives on free speech, but if it's a right, then that argument seems to like a right in the sense that we agreed with life. I mean, we're very far away from being able to justify that. You've got a country of 55. What are you at? 60 million now?
So it depends which bits you include, but it's I think it's 75 million roughly.
75 million, and they're arresting 12,000 people a year for their social media content. And you've got the United States, 350 million, and they're arresting 5, and it isn't because of they hurt someone's feelings. It's, well, I mean, in that one case it was, but in general, it's going to be because they made an actual threat, an incitement, or it's going to be something like that. This is, according to this fact check site, offensive messages on social media that cause annoyance, discomfort, or anxiety. And the three things something that jumps out to me about all those words is just how objective they are. I mean, it's so clear to me that those words mean exactly the same for all of us all the time. So obviously
Mm.
there could be no possible problem with that. So this seems like a real thing going on in the UK that I mean, if I were you, I'd be concerned about, but I'm not sure
I
you do.
No, I think there's reason to be concerned about it. I mean, I don't think you're engaging really with the cultural differences thing here. I mean, to
Clearly
to
not.
take
Yeah.
to take a counter example, we don't have the death penalty in this country. So, I would hate to think how the number of Americans who are executed by the state every year would map onto the UK in terms of body count. If we flip that round, that's something that, from my point of view, I strongly disagree with. I'm glad that we have the laws that we have. And our laws are certainly not perfect, and there are things that I think are that could be improved. And yeah, free speech is one area where I think that maybe the American approach to it might be calibrated a bit closer to my preference than the UK setting. But these are all slightly, as you say, these are not objective, 100% objective judgment calls. So no, I don't want the police knocking on people's doors for having posted a mean tweet or an offensive meme. I don't think that's the best use of police time.
All right. Well, that might be the best that I can get from you on this, I guess. Let me we're past my normal amount of time. But I wanted to make a couple of controversial statements.
Oh,
Um,
go on.
well, yeah, well, I mean, maybe they're not controversial to you, but I actually do not believe there should be restrictions against incitement or whatnot. I would even allow that, and for because as you indicated, this it's not the speech itself that does the harm, right? It's the follow up actions, and so I
Mm-hmm.
think about and so like my policy is, so from a pragmatic point of view, is I actually want to hear the crazy lunatic things that people say, and I actually go out of my way to read them, um, whenever possible on like Reddit or maybe not 4chan or whatnot because it's a little raunchy there as far as the pictures go. Um,
That
but
could give you a distorted view of humanity if you're not careful.
going out of my way to look at Reddit posts.
Well, going out of your way to look at offensive or inciting posts.
Well, I think clarify the danger.
Oh, well, if you if you seek out objectionable content, I know it's like doctors and nurses famously have a tendency to overestimate the likelihood that that bad stuff might happen to them because they see a disproportionate amount of it. And I in my professional role, I come across a fair amount of situations where people have died due to infectious diseases, and there's a danger that makes me overestimate the likelihood of me or people I love dying in that way. Anything like our brains aren't great at calibrating risk, and we tend to do it by what we've seen recently and what's at the front of our minds. So if you deliberately expose yourself to some of the worst parts of the internet, then that could skew your view of what the average person is like, because the internet isn't real people.
Well, it's not the average person that I'm worried about.
Sure.
Yeah. And of course, you're not advocating, the government inserts themselves and shuts down those conversations. You're just saying that I shouldn't, go out of my way to find out what people really think in their own words. I should let it
It,
be
it, it-
filtered through something. I don't know.
well, I'm only suggesting this from out of a concern for your well-being.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. I thought that's where you're going. Yeah, and actually that is out of concern for my well-being that I do that. But I also um, find that there's a tendency among certain people, um, like the people who made this thing here. I know you can't read it. To minimize and filter out and try to sugarcoat and uh, package it in a way that will be a little bit more tenable or whatnot. So in other words, if you've got, like, say, hypothetically, 5,000 Antifa people hypothetically in um, Washington State, and they're all talking about how they're going to go burn buildings or whatnot. And they don't think they're the worst people. They think they're the best people, right? So
Most people do.
now if I living where I live, I don't necessarily have to worry about those people in Washington. But let's say I was in Washington, I'd want to know what a large group of people are actually talking about doing, and I don't want it filtered through Tom Brokaw. I don't want somebody who sees, like, well, people are going to think really bad things about my ideology if they find out that those people are saying those things. Because even if you shut them up, they're still they're still talking amongst themselves. The only difference is now I don't gain insight into what they really think. All I've really gained insight is what Tom Brokaw thinks is important for me to know.
Mm. Yeah, I'd say there's a middle ground, because I don't have the study to hand, and I'm not going to try and look it up in real time. But there has been some interesting research done on the ways that different political polarities are pulling apart, especially in America, and the danger that both sides take the online extremes as representative of the whole group of the other 50% of Americans. And so that is something that is a tendency that the internet exacerbates. I'm not suggesting it calls for any sort of top-down censorship or other sort of mass solution, but it does call for an awareness on the part of people who are consuming this content, especially the content curated or otherwise of people who think differently to us. I think talking, and this is a lesson of our friendship and arguments and other interactions, mostly arguments. Actually talking to someone who believes very differently to you, you find out that you have lots of concerns in common, and it's usually more a matter of emphasis in terms of what worries we prioritize, and what things feel most important to us to address as a society. So, again, speaking out of concern for your well-being.
Well,
I'd say,
also, yeah,
don't act like you're in a a World War II movie where you have to intercept the Nazis' communications and work out what they're going to do next, because that is that prophecy that most people on the opposite political spectrum for you are entirely reachable, and the online versions of their worst excesses are not necessarily ones that you should think of as representative.
I mean, there's so much of interest in there. I mean, that I buy as many books from these people as I do read their stuff online. So right. So it should make you feel a little bit better that I'm reading books, not just their
Yeah.
online postings. Yeah. So the challenge with that is that um, it's very clear that over the last 10 to 15 years, the people that you just described have been trying to close that Overton window so that the voices on, I guess we'll call it my side, are not heard at all. So that conversation was not happening because I guess we're too radical. Everything is a hate speech. A peanut butter sandwich is hate speech, or it just never seemed to end on this goes, and people were losing their jobs. Um, DEI stuff was pushing out people. I mean, God forbid, and I'm not going to ask you to offer an opinion here, and neither will I. But shall we offer any kind of criticism to say the trans people? We'll quickly find out that there's only one narrative that is really allowed to be expressed in the mainstream without being piled on pretty hard. And that's really all come from one side. And I think, you know, it's useful and wise to take note of that. And if you want to push back against it, I'm glad. But you left the platform that had okay, all right. I withdraw that because you offered some other good reasons that I even agree with as to why I don't like the platform. So I withdraw it. I apologize. But it's pretty clear that on the 1950s liberal that advocated for free speech is not the same liberal as today. It's just not.
Well, I'm not in America, so I'm not going to try and speak too authoritatively about the political situation now. I will.
Kind of losing you.
Come on. Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Political situation was the last that I heard.
Okay. They're cracking down. It's Elon. He's coming in to turn me off. What was I saying? It's much easier to notice censorship and social pressure against views that you hold than it is to notice it against views that you don't hold, because
don't be sitting here trying to there you are, Elon's message. You're trying to gaslight me. I mean, come on.
Oh, I'm trying to gaslight you. No, I'm saying it's a natural tendency to see the views that you want to see shut down, but not notice when the views that you don't want to see and don't pay attention to being shut down. It's what we notice. What we attend to is what we notice.
Gavin Newsom.
Newsom. He's the governor of California, right?
Correct.
Okay. Point.
Violates the law explicitly to conduct a gay marriage. And you're winning. Dang it, I'm losing you right at the moment. No problem. He just skates. He wasn't governor at the time. He was the mayor of some city. So, he was up and coming, right? He was a lower level. And I believe her name was Kim Gardner, I think, in Kentucky, I think, where she was being asked to sign off on these marriages, and she was issuing the documents, but she just refused to sign it. This happened at almost the same time in relative terms. He's the hero. She's without a job. He's now the governor. She's bagging groceries for Walmart somewhere. This has been almost the universal trend of the last 15 years. I mean, find me another liberal who, well, more recently there have been some that have lost their jobs. There was a person down in Texas. You probably didn't hear about it. Did you hear about the flooding down in Texas?
Yeah, really bad.
Yeah, some nurse or something said that they all deserved it because they voted for Trump. So she got fired.
Okay.
So I mean, but that's relatively new. So I mean, maybe things will keep coming, But the trend prior to that, I mean, really, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. I mean, come on.
Mm,
If
okay.
it were the other, if it were any different, then um there would be 1,000 people like me on the other side, liberals and progressives, who are like, hey, where's our free speech, right? Why are people suppressing my viewpoint or whatever? And I bet you we could get off this program and spend 10 minutes looking, and I don't know, are we going to be able to find even 5? I don't think so.
Well, it's, as I say, not my country, but I am not. Okay.
So
Let me say, I will. I'll grant you many points about the censoriousness of certain parts of the progressive movement, and I
all
don't
right,
think that that's a good thing.
but they're not the average person, so
Well, no, they're not.
well, it
Clearly not.
doesn't. Yeah.
They're active online, which is not most Americans.
Um,
Influencers get that way by being distinctive and different. And politicians to some extent too. I would say it certainly appears to me from afar that there's a lot of viewpoint censorship going on the right at the moment. In terms of Republicans who might not be so on board with Trumpism gradually being weeded out of the party.
um, I don't know exactly about that, but it seems to be different than people losing their jobs and being arrested, you know, 12,000 times a year. Like, I mean,
I don't think one person was arrested 12,000
I
times.
know. Yeah, you see what I'm saying. So we're well past the time, and I know this is
Sure,
getting
sure.
late for you, and I want to be sensitive to your time, and maybe we can come back to this exact same topic when the shizzle can join us.
Oh, sure. That would be good. Is
So
that what we're calling it?
that's what I'm calling them.
Okay. Pull one
I
out for the
don't.
shizzle. Shame you couldn't
But
be here.
so I'm going to give you two things here to sign off. To give, I will do a closing statement,
Oh,
but if you want to do a closing statement on the free speech thing, and then if you wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about my horrible statements about equivocating on the word science, then we can do that too. But I figure we should wrap it up in 15 minutes at most. So if you don't think you can tackle it in that amount of time, maybe we can do it some other time.
I'll be succinct and
Okay.
concise.
Just remember, I'll get the final word.
Sure. No, well, it's your show,
Yeah.
so that's
Okay.
fair.
All right.
Okay. Final statement on this. I think that all rights at least have the potential to, at some points, and that they might be at the very margins or at the very edges, butt up against other people's rights. So, in principle, I would say there always has to be at least the potential for limits on even rights that you and I agree are very important and even could be classed as sacred. But like everything, if we agree that the right to life is not universal, if I'm in a fight to the death protecting my family, then the other person's right to life is no longer absolute, and there may be other examples of that. So I cannot sign on the dotted line and say that there should be no restrictions at all on free speech. After that, the devil is in the details about where we draw those lines, and lots of interesting and important conversations can be had about where that should be. On the science thing, it slightly relates to what we've been talking about in terms of defining something and then insisting on defining something in a very narrow way and then insisting everyone adhere to your definition. I was thinking about this out walking earlier on today, and I thought the way you define science, it's as if I defined steak as being only a T-bone, and then if someone brought me a sirloin, I'd be like, what is this? What is this? You told me I was getting steak. Get out of here. Now, that's not to say that there aren't situations where someone gives me something that's labeled steak. I think you might have had a steak and ale pie when we went to one of those pubs in Oxford where the Inklings used to meet. And I've had steak and ale pies where I've fished something out that I think is, nominally steak, but I would not agree to that definition. I'm not saying it's not beef, but it's not steak. So I'm not telling you can't tell me that some things that people claim are science are not science. For sure, I agree with that. But saying it can only be a T-bone and anything else you can't tell me it's steak, that feels too narrow and restrictive, and it's not going to align with with most other people's definition. So I just feel like that was one of the rejoinders that I wanted to make to your science podcast.
Well, so I guess this is a tendency I find on the left, but status. I don't even know. I don't want to try to pigeonhole you in particular, but this is a thing that I see, and it generally comes from one direction, which is to change the narrative by changing like definitions, right? And you've been guilty of this. You were the one that told me. Well, I said, well, marriage is between a man and a woman, and you're like, well, definitions change. You've told me that. This is probably 10 years ago. But now if I say, well, a man is someone who has a, you'd be like, you're not going to tell me that, well, definitions change, right? Now you're going to be like, oh, I'm trying not to get fired here. Now you're probably going to be like, oh, I don't think it changes. It's the same damn argument, right? It's the exact same argument. Well, and I've seen them say that, so I know that they actually say it because I go to Reddit, and so this tends to happen usually. The equivocation changes, or excuse me, when there's an agenda or there's a narrative that wants to be pursued, and people don't want to take the time to reason it out and to be clear. So if you want to say to me, so I have this thing that's scientific that I consider to be scientific, but I can see it as not, the kind of, it does not have the same epistemological robustness as, say, like, boiling water. That was the example that I used. A particular, it has certain caveats. Then I'd be like, okay, but why not just call it something else? Why have a different word? Like, why do I need to come up with a new word? Like, there is a new words now. I don't even know what they are. So now there's a word that describes a relationship, a committed lifelong relationship between a man and a woman. It's not marriage, apparently. I don't know what it is. They keep changing the word on, but now it has its own name, and it took me 15 to 20 words to say what one word used to cover. Right? So we had this one word science that used to cover more or less a certain method that was empirical in nature and repeatable. And now we have other things that sort of like the nerdy kids that want to belong and have all the cash of that the famous scientists have. Oh, we're scientists too. Call us. Just take the time to be honest about it and say, this is what I'm doing over here is a little bit different than what that is. And I would say you should use a different word, but the fact that no one wants to, that they take umbrage to it, is a warning sign to me. It's like saying I'm not willing to be absolutely honest with what it is that I'm doing because I want whatever it is that they want. If you say that something is science, Like scientifically proven, you hear this all the time, right? It's scientifically proven. That's the debate ender, right? I mean, don't you agree? That's usually the
Sorry, am I allowed to talk? I thought this was your last word.
no. Well, no, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, we're talking about science. Then I'll do my last word.
Oh, sorry.
This is
Okay.
like a mini segment on science.
I agree. It is no matter the quality of the evidence, it's lazy and disrespectful to the intelligence of the audience to just say this is science. That's the end of it, because science is an imperfect human endeavor, and science can get things wrong. And it's it's like the Churchill quote about democracy. It's the worst system of government in the world apart from all the others. And like steak, there are things that people call science in a pie that should not be called science.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that, but I'm not with you on eliminating everything apart from particle physics, basically, from the definition of science, because you want everything to be completely reproducible, despite the fact that the arrow of time runs in only one direction.
Yeah, something that usually we don't get wrong is the temperature at which water boils at a certain atmosphere.
Well, let's reconvene up the top of a mountain and then we'll see.
I don't know. What do you want to invent a new word to describe that? And then you can keep science for all the other stuff, and we'll have another word. Maybe we'll take 20 words to describe what I just described, which used to be covered by one.
I did very much enjoy that you referenced the Peter Boghossian and was it Helen Clark, the fake paper in the Social Science Journal, because that was very funny.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna obviously have to talk about this again sometime.
I suggested that we talk about it, but you had to go ahead and do the podcast by yourself.
Well, that's true. I really felt that it was important that you got to hear me out uninterrupted at least once. And,
sure.
Yeah. So, and I had other reasons for not being ready to do it with you involved, but so I hope you're not offended.
No.
Okay.
No, sure.
Right. Okay, so now what's going to happen is, and I'm going to explain this because I guess I wasn't very clear before. I'm gonna switch to a different screen for my closing. You won't be on it. No one will be able to hear you, but I will still see you on my monitor over here, and I will be able to see your eyes rolling.
Do I not get to say first goodbye to all your viewers?
I will give you that chance. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm just telling you the way it works. Because it's a little confusing. So then after I close the podcast, then also we can shoot the breeze just a little bit.
Nice.
So now go ahead and I thank you, Danny, for being with me today. I should say that. And now
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and you would like to say something to the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Nice talking to you.
We're gonna do it again.
And you out there in internet land, be well.
Yeah. Oh, hey, I know who it was now. JB. JB was our watcher. You know him as
the watcher.
You know him as the doctor of old forum days.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Muzzle
so you're gonna go off on the screen, but you're not disappearing completely. So just there he goes. Now no one can hear you, but I can, so don't interrupt me. All right, let's see here. Well, we covered a lot of ground there, and I don't know about Danny, but I always feel like there's 20 other things that I wish I would have said. And actually this morning, as I was thinking about what I would say, there was 20 other things that I wanted to say, and none of them were really said. But I do want to say one thing. I made a comment that I even think that speech where you incite to violence should be permitted speech. And I think there's a false argument here. I think people are afraid that when they hear people say these things, the the words themselves will spread like wildfire. They might give somebody else an idea that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Um, well, that's kind of the one of the values of free speech. But if it's intrinsic to you as to who you are, then it doesn't the utility doesn't matter. But I think in this case they raise a utilitarian argument against it. It might cause bad things. But on the other hand, the problem is the people that I'm worried about the most are the people who are not speaking. These are the ones that I think you really have to be worried about. And if you have people who are in their heart and mind conspiring to do evil, and they're telling no one about it, that's a recipe for disaster. Take as an example the guy who tried to assassinate Trump the first time. He has, to our knowledge, no social media presence whatsoever, no history at all, any knowledge of why he did it or that he was even going to do it. We could do that with the Vegas shooter also. Guy who killed more than 50 people said nothing about it. I'm sure he wasn't thinking, oh, what about my free speech? But it would have been nice, right, if he would have said something to someone, if only so the rest of us could take notice and maybe take precautions. The people who we really have to be worried about, they're just like, it's just the same reason why you can outlaw murder, but people are still going to murder. So what exactly is the value of the law? The law gives us something else, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have the law, but we should understand what it's really doing. And if we have laws suppressing free speech, the people who are really going to do harm, they were never going to say it anyway. More so, the ability to speak releases in steam. It takes the heat off of the situation. Yeah, I know that at the moment it creates heat, right? All these people talking, whatever, but almost always that kind of stuff blows over unless it's like the Bolshevik Revolution or something. For the most part, it just sort of blows over and people find common ground after a time and it just becomes a thing. But the person who doesn't talk, that guy, he's plotting. He's going to do it and no one will ever know. And there's no law that's ever going to be able to reach that guy. And we should not delude ourselves into thinking that by restricting speech or other rights willy-nilly is going to be able to spare us from great evils. It never will. And our solutions should be found by erring in the opposite direction. So that's what I had to say about that. And I didn't think I really had a chance to say it clearly enough. So it's not like I want people going out trying to kill people, but I tend to think that we're better served if we know they're coming. So this is a long podcast. Thank you for watching. If you've watched this far, I do now have in the description of my post on YouTube, there is a link to the Patreon. I have no idea how it works, but I also put a link to a supporter page where I kind of outline and summarize my plans for the future, things that I will need, things that I need now, and things that I will need in the future. So be sure to check that out. And like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And you're going to have to help me because, as I said at the very beginning, I tried to do a little YouTube ad, and it was clickbait. You got to be kidding me, right? It's just like I just can't win with these people. I don't know. I guess I could just do a post about cartoon about clowns, and I'd have like 10,000 teeny boppers as my subscribers, but that's not exactly who I wanted to reach. But apparently that's the only one they're going to let me reach. So I need your help to spread the word. That's what it comes down to. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. And with that, I bid you a good weekend. And where is my exit screen? Jamie! There it is. I saw it. Goodbye.